All right, she says to call her. Here we go. Oh God, she's on mobile. Hey, can you hear me?
Hello?
Hey, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Am I live?
Yeah, you're live right now.
Oh, cool.
Yep, we got 317 people watching right now.
Oh, nice. Wow. A lot of
Alrighty.
people.
Okay, so you DM'd me on Twitter earlier today, and
Yes.
I watched your video. I took a few notes on it so I could kind of get your positions laid out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to like take your beliefs out of context or mischaracterize them or anything like that. So
Good.
you are a transmed. Would you identify as a true scum?
Yes, but I don't like the word because first of all, Truscum has the word scum in it, whereas like turf is like an acronym, so it's not like a I don't think turf is a slur. But I just think the word true scum, if anyone from the outside hears it, you're not going to take that seriously. So
Well,
you hear the word sorry.
yeah, because I would agree with this. I think that generally people who don't see non-binary people as valid are scum.
I don't think that's like, okay, first of all, you're allowed to have your opinion. And I'll totally respect that. But when you call me a scum for having an opinion that's different from yours, I don't think that's necessarily a good way to build a conversation. I don't think you, I
Well,
think when you have a debate with
bigotry
someone, you
isn't
have
an
to treat them
opinion.
with respect.
Well, bigotry isn't an opinion.
Okay, but I'm not a bigot. I just personally think that, like, I support 100% non-binary people. Being non-binary is completely valid. The only issue is if they're taking the word transgender, it's going to cause misconceptions within the transgender community.
Okay, so I guess we'll go through your points here because you say that point here, and I have a response for that, but I want to make sure we have all your positions laid out. So, your original thing that you said in the video that you sent me was there needs to be a distinction between non binary people and transgender people. Do you agree with that?
That I 100% agree with that.
All
And
right.
it's because there's two different things. It's like not disrespect at all. But when you have someone who claims that I'm not either gender, and you have someone who claims I'm just a female, literally a girl, they're two different things, right? If you have someone who doesn't claim to be either gender and someone who claims to be one gender and who's on the binary, I think calling it the same term and using the same term interjectively for both of those things is just not good to do. Like I think non-binary, if you're a non-binary person and you use the word non-binary, it's a more accurate descriptor of what you are. So why use the word transgender?
Okay, so first there's a few elephants in the room we have to acknowledge here. So do you believe that gender is a binary?
So like, do I believe that there's only two genders?
Yes.
Okay, so personally, I tend to think so, but I don't think it's as black and white as that. I do acknowledge that there's other genders, but I don't think it's like a third gender, for instance. Like you can believe that you're not male or female, but I don't think that's a third gender. I think that's just not being either gender. And I think there's a lot of other complex like gender identities, but I don't necessarily think that there's more than two genders.
Why do
So
you?
for most people, it is binary,
But
but
why
I'm
do you?
not like denying other
Sure,
people's existence.
but why do you think there's only two genders? What leads you to believe this?
Well, first of all, like I don't want to talk about biological sex because I have like iffy relationships or beliefs on that. But that's a good clue. Like there's no third sex. And to like third genders, like how like what's the third gender?
Well, it wouldn't
If
be a
there's not
third
male or
gender. It would be an
female.
infinite amount of genders. Gender being socially constructed means whatever social space or society that you're in that recognizes certain genders or any particular gender identity, that gender is valid. That's how gender
Okay,
works. It
so
just so happens that
if
the society that we're in and most modern societies in the world at the moment recognize two genders that usually conform more or stack up more with certain biological sexes.
Okay. So can I ask you, those two genders then are very valid, but my question is, if you can say that there's infinite amount of genders, what stops a gender from being valid and what stops a gender from not being valid? So if you identify as an attack helicopter, that's obviously not valid, but if you said everything is valid, then by your own definition, wouldn't that be valid as well? But you wouldn't think so. So what is there to distinguish that? If everything is valid, then everything must be valid, right? If you can, there's infinite amount of genders.
Okay, so I'm not talking about identifying as attack helicopters. I'm talking about gender identity. Gender, being socially constructed, is validated by it being recognized by certain social spaces. That's how things that are socially constructed work. Very much like language. For example, if two people come together or a group of people come together and they're like, fuck it, we're going to make our own language, and they sit down and they make their own language. Obviously, this isn't the perfect comparison, but in terms of the socially constructed aspect, it is. And they make their own language. It has its own alphabet. It is grammatically correct. They are capable of communicating with it. That's a real language. In the same way that you can come up with a new gender, an infinite potential of gender identities, as long as it is socially accepted and recognized in a certain social space. That's how socially constructed things work.
Okay, so I have my social space. The social space is the alt-right, and my gender is a frog. So we're going to sexually identify as a third gender. We're going to call it a frog. Regardless if you're male or female, we're all just going to bind together. And, like, do you understand? Like, if anything is valid and that's all you're defining, that anyone, it's so susceptible to flaws. The reason two genders works is because you have a basis for it, and that basis is biological sex. I don't totally agree with biological sex, but now, it has to be based on something real.
So it doesn't, though. Can you give me an example of, like, how people would be harmed by identifying as a frog or something? I mean, like, you're doing the attack helicopter joke, which a lot of us people in these lefty spaces
it's not a joke.
Like...
I personally, I hate the joke, but I think it's a good way to make my point, because it points out how utterly ridiculous this argument is, because obviously...
Wait, can you give me, like, an example of how this would actually harm people? Like, if someone actually did the meme and identified as an attack helicopter, how would this harm people?
Because people wouldn't take anyone seriously anymore. No trans people would ever be taken seriously. Our rights would go down the toilet, because people on the right would think that we're crazy, which is what's happening right now.
So is that the fault of the people identifying as an attack helicopter, or is it the fault of the people that are bigoted and don't like trans people and want to take away their rights?
At what point do you start realizing that insanity is insanity? At what point do you hold people responsible for the damage that they're causing?
How is it insanity?
Oh, so an alt-right troll who claims they're an attack helicopter as a joke is not insane? You're completely defending that right now.
What?
So
no, I thought we were talking about someone who genuinely identifies as like a frog or an attack helicopter. I didn't know we were talking about the joke.
Okay, but let's say someone generally says, I sexually identify as a dog. You're going to take that seriously? You're going to say that's completely valid. They're trans as well. Everyone can just be transgender. Just identify as whatever the frick gender you want.
I don't think anyone's identifying as a dog. Generally, when we talk about non-binary gender identities, we're talking about things like agender, demi-boy. Like, there's a big list of them. But I don't think dog or attack helicopter are going to be genders you're going to see people identifying as.
Here's what you said. You said that as long as it's accepted within the social space, it's a valid gender, correct?
Sure.
And I was saying, well, hypothetically, let's say that these people generally, and there's already a movement of people who identify as like animals.
Yeah, those are otherkin. Otherkin aren't transgender.
Oh, but non-binary are transgender, so why not add them to the label too?
Because gender and identifying as an animal, as a thing, like a person or a place or a thing, particularly when you refer to persons like animal, isn't the same as gender.
But why not? You said there's so many gender identities. There's like a bajillion genders, so why can't an animal be a gender too, right? If everything's a gender now.
Because animals are a thing. Gender is a socially constructed idea revolving around your identity, your presentation, and your pronouns.
Okay, but if someone identifies as an animal and they give themselves different pronouns because of that, I'm just saying, like, it's gotten so freaking ridiculous that I wouldn't even be surprised at this point.
So what you're asking me right now is, why can't a rock be a tree? Because a rock isn't a tree. Transgender and otherkin isn't the same thing, because they aren't the same thing.
And non-binary isn't trans.
Mind you, okay,
I know that they're not the same thing, but if you say they're all valid and they're all
Wait, yes, they are, though. It is by definition that they are trans. The definition of transgender is identifying as a gender different than the one you were assigned at birth. By definition, non-binary people identify as a gender different from that they were assigned at birth, so they are transgender.
Our definition of what is gender is different, and you're saying all these crazy things are genders.
No, okay.
That anything can be a gender, so I'm saying
our definitions of trans aren't different. You just disagree with the scientific community on this. I have an entire document of associations, medical studies, all the data behind what I am saying. Absolutely. Here you go. Oh, wait.
I would love to see your support.
As a matter of fact, I would like
anything is a gender.
Well, no, that's not what they're saying at all. So
that's literally what you said. It just needs to be accepted in a social space, and boom.
I didn't say anything is a gender. I said there is an infinite amount of potential gender identities. That doesn't mean anything can be a gender. Like, oh, identify as a fire hydrant.
Well, if someone identifies as that gender, in your eyes, doesn't that make it a gender? If someone identifies it and is socially accepted, right?
I don't think that's the same thing. But why not? You know what? Why
But
not?
isn't it?
Why not?
I
Hey, if
mean,
it's hey, if there's a social space where it's accepted, why the fuck not? However, otherkin is definitely a different thing. Same goes for trans age.
I
However, let
agree.
me go
But
ahead and
I think non-binary is different from trans, and you already think that non-binary is part of trans when they're two separate communities.
well, no, they aren't. They are trans. So here is a list of
See,
organizations that recognize the difference between sex and gender, and that gender is socially constructed and non-binary people are valid. The
I
American
agree, but
Psycho.
there's two genders, male and female,
Okay,
which is
so
fine. It doesn't have to relate to your
So
biological
the
sex, but
list
there's
that
only
I'm
two
about to give
genders.
also disagrees with that. There is not two genders. That gender is socially constructed, and there is a potential infinite amount of gender identities. The American Psychological Association, the American Medical Association, the American Psychoanalytic Association, Human Rights Campaign, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American College of Osteopathic Pediatricians, the United Nations, and the United Kingdom's National Health Service. I also have, and I sent it to you, a whole list of studies and meta-analyses ranging everywhere from sex being complicated and not binary to the oppression of genderqueer identities, as well as trans people in sports, all that shit. Like, I have an entire body of data behind this. You just seem to have what if I identified as an attack helicopter is your argument.
Well, no, I'm taking apart your argument that anything can be a valid gender because just
So
because people say something is a valid gender doesn't make it valid, and it's hurting the trans
Hello,
community by saying
Xander.
anything
I know
valid
it isn't
is
much, but
valid.
it's as
Just
much
because
as I
people
could
say
give.
that they're a gender
I
doesn't mean
love
it's
your
actually a
content.
gender. And what I'm
Trans
saying
rights,
is this is
everybody,
hurting trans
people
people, and if you
hug.
want anyone to take you seriously moving forward, you've got to acknowledge this. You've got to shut down genders that obviously aren't legitimate. You can't just say that anything is legitimate just because people say that. You know what I'm saying?
So the issue is that we're making a lot of presuppositions right off the bat. You're saying that these genders obviously aren't valid or obviously aren't real. And that's what you're basing your argument on. You already have these assumptions that you're starting off with, and you're trying to build your argument around them. But the problem is those base assumptions that you've made aren't legit. There's no science behind them whatsoever.
And there's no science behind there being more than two genders.
Yes, there is. I literally just listed
What is the third gender? Tell me what a third gender is.
Okay, Demi Boy. There's one. It's not three. It's a potential. There's a shit ton of them, but Demi Boy is an example.
Okay, let me Google this real quick. Define Demi Boy. Let's see what that is. A gender identity describing someone as partially but not wholly identifies as a man or otherwise masculine. Okay, but that's not even like a. That's like partly one gender.
That's
That's
just one that I came up with. Yes, because gender isn't a binary; it's a spectrum.
But that's not a fully different gender.
Okay. How about genderqueer, demi-boy, demigirl, agender, gender fluid? There's a shit ton of them. Like, do you need me to list all of them?
But those aren't genders.
Yes, they are. You just Googled it and the definition came up. It is a gender identity. It's a gender.
They certainly exist, but they're not genders. Okay, you can be male or female. But there are certain, like, it's a subset of a specific
Wait,
gender.
do you want to talk about...
a demi boy.
Hold on, do you want to talk about how sex isn't a binary either?
I mean, if you want to go for it, I mean, intersex people certainly do exist.
Okay, do you believe that sex
But that doesn't mean that there's a third sex. There's no third sex.
Okay, so when you say there isn't a third sex, that's incorrect, but that's also sort of a mischaracterization of how a spectrum works. So sex, and this is how the medical community sees it, is a bimodal distribution of sexual characteristics. It isn't male or female, it is sort of a spectrum with masculine on one side and feminine on the other side, with most people with a heavy preference for male or female, but the existence of the outliers, intersex people, people who are a bit more androgynous, those people, those outliers, you may claim they're an error or something. I mean, that's usually what TERF types like to bring up. Their existence still negates the existence of a binary. Sex is not a binary, it is also a spectrum, and this is how the medical community sees it.
Okay, so... But that's the thing, is like when you see something as a binary and not a spectrum, that's not to say that there's not differences within the binary. Like, not all women are the same. There are women who are more masculine than other women. That doesn't mean that there's a million genders, right? Like, let's say you have a lesbian who's like butch. And that's still the same. She's still a woman, in the same as like a woman who's very feminine is still a woman. You don't need to create different genders for that sort of difference.
So she would just be a bit more masculine. That doesn't mean she's a new gender. Sex and gender aren't the same thing. We're not.
Well,
you're talking about.
And if you're...
So are we talking about like physicality? Like she's very like she's like very buff and has like a very strong jawline? Or are we talking the way that she dresses? Like she cuts her hair short. She tends to wear what's usually considered to be more masculine clothing. Are we talking about gender presentation or sex, like biological sex? Because you have to
Like,
make
what do
that
you mean?
distinction. You have to make that distinction because you're talking about like a very, what you would say, like a really butch lesbian, right? So is she like,
Yeah.
so is she like very, are we talking about the biological side? Like, is she very tall? Is she very buff? Does she have like a strong jawline, like things you would consider to be masculine features? Or does she present very masculine, like a lot of, like, more like shorter hair, things like that?
Okay, I think I get what you're saying here.
Okay, so
Well,
what are we
okay,
talking about here in your example?
but like, okay, so let me just say, so let's say someone is like very masculine presenting, but they still identify as like female, but they identify as female, but it's like they kind of identify as male as well, like they're somewhere in the middle or whatever, but they are basically female. And it's like, I understand that people might identify certain ways, but I just think, I hate saying this, but generally, I kind of believe you have to choose one or the other. Like, if you live in a society and you want to blend into society, and you say, "I'm kind of a mix of two genders. I'm just kind of like whatever," people are not going to take you seriously. And if you want to be accepted by society, you kind of have to do that. And I don't want to sound like a bigot because I'm not, but like, I just think it's for the best of trans people. And if
Okay,
people like everyday people are going to see that, and
so
no one's going to take that seriously,
so
you know?
this is so I'm gonna
It's
compare
impacting my
this.
life.
I'm gonna compare this to the All right, I'm gonna compare this to the civil rights movement with Martin Luther King. Hold on, I'm bringing it up. I'm bringing out the letter from Birmingham jail here because what you just said was some fucking white moderate shit, as Martin Luther King Jr. would say. Here, I gotta bring it up. I always gotta do it. All right, because what you just said is like very. I'm sorry to say it, but very fucking stupid. Hold on.
How did you go from being an alt-righter to being this far left?
I did a lot
That
of research. I did a
I'm
lot of
sorry, you are
research.
like the def
I'm the what?
like isn't like a grifter someone who like changes their political opinion?
No, that's not what a
Oh,
grifter is at all.
okay,
All
then
right.
I wouldn't know.
So here is a paragraph from Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail. I must make two honest confessions to you, my Christian and Jewish brothers. First, I must confess that over the last few years I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in the stride towards freedom is not the white citizens' councilor, the Ku Klux Klanner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I can't agree with your methods or direction of action, who paternalistically feels that he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by the myth of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait until a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of good will is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. You're basically doing a white moderate right now, saying that the non-binary people just need to fucking suck it up and kowtow to the transphobes in society instead of trying to educate people in society to make them understand things better.
Okay, so in that case, I understand the comparison, and I don't think that's like a bad thing. Are you saying that I'm like just as bad as like an actual racist or an actual like
No. I'm saying that the
transphobic
thought
person?
no, I'm saying that the thought process is the same. And since I consider and so does science considers non-binary people to be trans, you technically are transphobic because you're being pretty discriminatory against
I'm
non-binary people.
literally transgender.
Okay. Oh god. So do you think that you being trans excludes you from being transphobic?
I guess I hate myself then. I mean, I must hate
What?
myself. I must want to, I'm
What is
like,
okay, so what you're
if I'm
doing right now
transphobic, then I hate myself,
so
right?
what you're doing right now is called identity politics. Do you know what identity politics is?
Well, you're left, so you do it all the time, right?
What? No, I'm very opposed to idpol. Extremely opposed to idpol. You are doing idpol right now.
Isn't literally everything you're doing identity politics saying that there's a
No.
bajillion genders?
Identity politics. What? That is no. That's intersectionality. Identity politics is saying that your identity precludes you or necessitates you to hold certain beliefs. And in this example, you're saying that being transgender precludes you from being transphobic.
Well,
That
yeah.
is
Would you
idpol.
call a black person racist? And
Yes, if they are
so you're
racist. Jesse Lee Peterson, I'll use Jesse Lee Peterson as an example. Jesse Lee
sorry.
Peterson literally believes that black people have fallen to the devil and that they are inherently immoral and that white people are inherently moral and it's white people's job to show black people the way because black people are inherently worse than white
But
people. I think
if
that's a
he's
black person being racist.
But if he genuinely feels that way, that's his opinion.
Yes,
And
and
he
he's
obviously doesn't hate
racist.
himself.
He's literally
Racist implies that there's some sort of oppression from a different race. And also, you
what?
have a white cis guy telling a trans woman that she's transphobic. It's hilarious.
You're doing id poll right now. You're saying, "Oh, a white cis guy is calling a trans woman transphobic." It's ridiculous. You're doing an id poll right now.
Oh my god.
That's id poll. You're doing
So
an id
you can
poll.
be a white cis guy, and you
Yes.
can say that I'm transphobic for
Yes.
having a different opinion than you.
Yes.
So basically, I disagree with you. That means I'm transphobic.
No. What you were saying right
That's
now
what you're
is
saying, right?
transphobic. It is discriminatory to non-binary people.
In order to not be transphobic, I have to agree with you. Essentially, what you're saying.
No. In order to not be transphobic, you have to not discriminate against trans people. It doesn't matter if I agree with you or not. If tomorrow morning I wake up and I say that actually trans people are terrible, then if you disagreed with me, then you would not be transphobic, because in that scenario I would be. It's not that you disagree with me.
So in
it's
order
that
to be
what you were saying.
You have to agree with a specific thing. You have to agree with a specific ideology that I don't agree with, despite being trans.
So
and we just
the
disagree
ideology
with what trans is.
So if the ideology of what you disagree with,
in my opinion, you're transphobic because you believe that non-binary is transgender. We have a different view of what transgender is.
Wait, how am I transphobic by your logic here?
Because you're saying that non-binary people are trans, and non-binary people identifying as trans is hurting the transgender community, and it's making other people think that we're insane.
Okay, so how is it hurting? Hold on. How is it hurting the transgender community?
Okay. So in my video, I literally there's a college professor, and I'm a transgender myself. So I asked a question because she was saying some ignorant stuff. She was saying that like biological sex and gender, like she was saying if you're, I forget exactly what it is, but basically it was some transphobic thing. She didn't believe in whatever, but she was saying that if you are transgender, then you go by they them pronouns. And I'm like, no, that's not true. Transgender people don't do that. And she was like saying, well, if you were a transgender person, you would call yourselves they and them. And it was so misguided. But like, if these people who've never heard transgender before, all they are exposed to is non-binary, and they're not exposed to someone who's transsexual or binary. And they only call themselves transgender. They give no indication that they're non-binary, which is what people are doing. They're stealing the term. Okay. It's going to make people think that all trans people are non-binary. They're literally taking over this movement from actual trans people like myself.
Okay, so once again, you're doing the whole like actual trans people thing. That is discriminatory towards non-binary people. But let's talk about this example that you gave.
Actual transgender is discriminatory towards an attack helicopter who also wants to be trans.
Oh,
because they're also trans too, and they're completely valid as well, right? They're completely valid.
Listen,
because
if you
if you want to, they're valid according to your logic.
Listen, if that's what we're gonna do, then I identify as an anti-aircraft missile, because that transphobic shit don't fly here. Okay. Now listen, we're gonna go with your.
And of course, you think that's a valid gender. That's. Whatever.
Okay, so we're gonna go with your meme here, all right? The story that you gave of your
I hate the meme too. I think it's a stupid meme.
Okay,
but
no,
we're gonna go. This whole conversation.
So okay, we're gonna go with your story here, all right? Where you talk about your professor that said trans people identify as they them. Now, so far, I don't know if you're lying about this story, right? I have no way of knowing.
I swear to God.
I don't know if I can fully agree with the story is real, but let's say it is real. Let's say okay. I'm gonna. All right.
Literally there.
All right. Okay, I'm gonna assume that the story is true. All right, completely true. How does the existence of some dumb fuck professor prove your point in any way?
It proves that people are being misinformed. We all know that that's fake, right? Like you can agree with me that that person is not. Like I'm sorry, not fake, but we can all agree that that person is wrong. That professor in her assessment that all trans people go by they them pronouns is wrong.
Okay.
What I'm saying is I know what causes this misinformation, and this is due to non-binary people claiming that they're trans.
Okay.
So if non-binary
I think it's way more likely.
Non-binary.
Okay, I think it's way more. Okay, so non-binary people do call themselves non-binary. They call themselves non-binary trans people, or just go with non-binary, because generally in trans-inclusive spaces, unless it's a place that you would inhabit, when someone says, "Oh, I'm non-binary," the implication that they're also trans kind of goes along with it. But regardless, we're gonna ignore that. Do you think that the existence of dumb fucks that don't know anything about trans people is more likely to be based on lack of education and misunderstanding of these issues than, oh, they heard a non-binary person once and now they think that all transgender people go by they, them?
Let me ask you, whose responsibility is it to educate people? If you leave people to their own accords, what incentive do they have to educate and inform themselves?
So
isn't it our job to inform people? Isn't it our job to be correct about these things? and to tell people what transgender is?
All right,
Why are we just...
so what I advocate for most is that I believe that some form of gender studies, or at least an understanding of these things, should be taught baseline in school. I'm like maybe middle school or high school, right? I think this is a very basic thing that should be taught in school, in curriculum. However, what I do personally as a public figure that has an audience is I try to educate as many people on these issues as possible. I don't think that it is the job of every single trans person that exists to have to educate every cis person, although I think it's nice to do if you get the opportunity, especially with friends and family. But a lot of people can, that can be dangerous for a lot of trans people, It's dangerous to be a trans person. However, I think that it's probably worth educating these people instead of trying to kowtow to their, like, transphobia and their lack of knowledge.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, like, if you don't educate people and people are ignorant, whose fault is that? Like, you should...
What?
I don't... Like, what I'm saying
do you think
is,
it's the responsibility of every trans person to educate cis people that don't understand these things?
In an idealistic world, it shouldn't have to be. I'll agree with you on that. But
Okay.
in reality, we live in the real world, right? What I'm saying is, if you don't educate people, people are going to be ignorant. So you can't just blindly think, wow, everything is fairyland, You have to realize that if you don't educate people, people are going to be ignorant, and you can't call them, oh, they're a bigot because of that. You used to be a bigot, right?
Yes.
So, people educated you.
Yes, they did. And that's what I try to do. I try to educate people as well.
Well, good job. What I'm saying is that if you're non-binary, educate people on what the term actually means. Make sure to distinguish the fact that binary trans people exist too. Be sure to not call yourself transgender and confuse people.
But they are transgender, though. They are by definition transgender. The medical community agrees with this. So do you admit that the science disagrees with you on this?
No, because science says that there's only...
No, it literally doesn't. You will not find... You will literally... I've sent you an entire document of medical associations, including the fucking United Nations, that disagrees with you on this. You cannot cite a single reputable source that will agree with you on this, that there are only two genders. You will not find a single source.
I'm sorry, I kind of disconnected for a bit. I didn't get to hear all you said.
You will not find a single source... an actual reputable source that agrees that there are only two genders.
Okay, so first of all, what I'm going to say is, like, obviously you've done your research beforehand, and so you've already, like, come up with a bunch of stuff. If you gave me time to, like, look up stuff and do my own research in my own time, I'm sure I can find you stuff, but obviously as we're having this debate, I don't exactly have the time to do that right now. So, I mean, I'm going to take your word. I haven't read these things myself. I'm going to assume that you've done your facts and that these actual organizations say that. But what I'm saying is that these things change all the time. Just because one of these websites says this for now doesn't mean it's necessarily correct. As you're sure, they've had misinformation in the past. Just because a website says it, or quote unquote reputable site, their opinion can change in the future, and those opinions are heavily influenced by what society believes.
Okay, so you know how you're like a Truscum? You believe that you have to have gender dysphoria to be trans? Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
So
I think so.
The understanding that gender is socially constructed and not a binary basically came along with the discovery of gender dysphoria. It's been over 50 years. This has been established medical science, that there is a difference between sex and gender is not a binary.
But I agree that there's a difference between sex and gender. I agree. It's not the same thing.
Okay, so you've shifted the goalpost quite a bit here. We started out with like non-binary people are harming trans people.
I mean, they still are, but...
Wait, how are they harming trans people, though? Because the instances that you're giving is that they're confusing people, but the people they're confusing are the ones that are enacting violence or harming trans people. Why are you blaming
come on, my college professor is not enacting violence. She's probably a really big liberal. She just is misinformed because people on the left, these non-binary people, are misinformed.
All right, I'm not talking about your college professor who's saying that all trans people identify as they, them.
Doesn't mean they're violent.
What?
People on the right are not violent because they disagree with you.
What are you talking about? I have not said that a single time. So I'm not, when I talk about violence being enacted on...
You said the people who disagree with you are violence.
No, I said, so your teacher saying that all trans people identify as they, them, I don't believe it's violence, all right? However, there is undoubtedly a disproportional amount of violence that is enacted on trans people, ranging from bullying to actual murder.
No, and it's bad, but what I'm saying is, so we agree on the same thing. Like, transphobic violence is a big problem. We agree on this, correct?
Yes.
I 100% agree. But my question to you is like we disagree on what's causing it. So like, what do you think is causing this?
I
Like,
think trans.
I genuinely want to hear.
I think uneducated transphobes who are hurting trans people are causing it.
But I think miseducated people, I think non-binary people are the source of misinformation. So you think someone like me is the source of misinformation,
Yeah,
whereas I can.
definitely, absolutely.
So it's essentially hearsay. It's like you think
Well,
I'm causing
well,
misinformation. I think
no,
you're
because
causing
I
misinformation.
have data
So who's
in
right?
studies. I have data and studies to support the fact that what you're saying is incorrect. And I mean, you have like 300 subs on YouTube, so you have a platform. There is not a very many like non-binary people that have a very large platform. I mean, I don't know if Chipflake is. Yep, Chipflake is still watching. They have a pretty big platform. They do animation stuff on YouTube, but like I don't think there's
Cool.
this fucking like monolith of non-binary people that are spreading the non-binary agenda to the average person.
Okay, so first of all, 300 subs. I have such a big platform. Wow. Like I'm not
That
gonna
is
do
a
that.
platform. 300 people is bigger than like, oh, maybe you have like a couple friends. That is a platform.
Okay, whatever. But like what I'm saying is in this debate, it's obviously going to be very heavy bias because the people watching this aren't people who agree with me, right? So everyone in the chat, I think someone is saying that they make me want to kill themselves, which is very lovely to hear because I have a different opinion than them. Obviously, like
Well,
I'm
no, because
okay
you're
with like,
invalidating their identity. Having
well,
your
I'm not
identity
invalidating them.
invalidated, well, you
It's
are.
total. I have nothing against non-binary people. It's okay to be
So,
non-binary.
well, you say that, but
They're
you're also
valid. They're just not
okay.
trans.
So the argument that you're making, and I'm not saying they're equivalent because I know you're going to do that. The argument they're making is essentially the same thought process of people who like back in segregation times were like, listen, I don't think that we should enslave black people or anything. I think enslaving black people is terrible. However, and I have nothing against black people, but you know, separate but equal, right? We don't want them using the same water fountains, the
Okay.
same bathrooms as white people. But I don't have anything against them. They're just not. They shouldn't be with the rest of the general population.
So here's the thing with that, right? I think that in that case, obviously segregation is awful and wrong. But at the time, they realized that because of the way society was, if you were to forcefully integrate people, violence would ensue. And it's horrible. It's disgusting to even think about that because to think that someone would be violent over someone sharing the same space as you see what's happening in bathrooms today, is a horrible thing. But
Okay,
what I'm
so
saying,
wait, so you're doing the Boogie 2988 take. Do you know who Boogie 2988 is?
he's a YouTuber
Yeah, so
and he
he so when he went on the H3 podcast one time and he talked about how he always believed that gay people should have equal rights, but he never wanted to push it too much because if you push it, then it's going to go all the craziest violent and they're going to start attacking gay people. And he got in a lot of trouble from it because it's the same argument you're making now, and it's a really fucking stupid argument. Society doesn't just get more accepting and less violent as time passes. It takes aggressive advocacy and civil rights movements in order to make society more
okay.
accepting. It
So
doesn't
let,
just happen passively.
So what you're saying essentially right now is like the Civil War happened. So you're saying in order to end people being enslaved, killing millions of people is the solution. Like there's no right way to say this.
Yes.
Obviously slavery is horrific.
If it takes a war to free an entire demographic of people that are being enslaved, then yes, I think it's probably worth it.
So
Sometimes
killing a million.
yes. Wait, are you actually trying to like say that the Civil War was bad?
No, no, what I'm saying is if you gave it a few more decades, I'm sure you could have made slow gradual changes that over time, the South would have had to deal with slavery not being a thing, outlawed, without killing millions of people in a war. So are you saying that in order to protect trans rights, we should go to war over this stuff? We should go to war over bathroom spills instead of being like I can live with the fact of not being able to use the restroom that I want to use if it means millions of people don't have to die in a war. Like there's
Okay.
some things
Do
that are
you
just more
think
important than that,
so? Do you think that these are comparable situations, or do you think when I say that it takes aggressive civil advocacy that we're talking about educating people? You know, marching in parades, getting ourselves onto like large platforms and whatnot to spread information. I'm not talking about starting a war. For example, trans people aren't literally enslaved, you know, by fucking cis people, right? They aren't working the fields, and there isn't like a civil fucking war that's going to happen because of this. All right. What I'm
But what I'm
advocating
saying,
for is aggressive advocacy.
okay, well, I mean, I'm just saying, in your case, like if things aren't, if you take aggressive action, that aggressive action is not working, you keep going aggressive and more aggressive until you get your way. It's not
So
a sense of, okay, we've gone too far, maybe this isn't a good thing. And you look at a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters, there's Project Veritas videos where Bernie Sanders supporters are sympathizing with freaking communism. and saying they're going to cause violence if their candidate doesn't win, we're looking at a reality where the left is becoming violent, and I don't support it. I don't support Antifa. I really don't.
You're citing Project Veritas?
Hey, they're facts. They had a reporter go in what these people said in private, and this person said they wanted to start violence. I'm just saying.
Okay, so are you a fascist?
The left wants to cause violence.
Wait, are you?
No, I'm not a fascist.
Okay, so
because I disagree with you.
Okay, so you are anti-Antifa.
No, because Antifa is a terrorist organization. They want to cause violence.
Okay, so for starters, Antifa isn't an organization, it's a movement.
Okay, well, they're a movement that wants to cause violence.
So, well, you start by saying they're a terrorist organization, and then
okay,
no,
so right. They're not.
All right.
They're a bunch of people
they're uncentralized. Okay, obviously. Now, do you think that violence is inherently wrong?
Of course, I do.
So if someone breaks into your house and tries to kill you, and you fight back, and you end up like, I don't know, fucking tasing them or punching them in the face, do you think that violence is unwarranted?
If they're about to kill me, then obviously, that's the only thing you can do. But that's only if someone is literally threatening to take your life.
All right. So if someone threatens your safety and well-being, sure. So, all right. What you're saying is bullshit right now, and we're about to get to that. Don't worry. So, so you admit that if someone is threatening your well-being, you can justify violence towards them.
No, I see what you're doing. You're trying to deflect by saying...
I'm not deflecting at all.
I specifically believe, unless your life is...
Fascists threaten the well-being of a significant amount of people in America.
Fascists are not coming to your house and killing you.
Yes, they... A guy literally fucking... There was 2 literal Nazi mass shootings that resulted in the death of nearly 100 people last year.
Yeah,
or more than that,
more
even.
Violence caused by, lower-income black communities. Tons more people are being killed about. I don't see anyone talking about that. It's always the sensationalized case. Of course, the white people, the white alt-righters are the people you talk about, not all these violent minorities in poor neighborhoods. Statistically, way more likely to happen. And you have so many people on the right, so many people on the so-called alt-right. Why do you think... Very, very small minority of people who do horrific, horrible things that no one... is justified.
Why do you think that there is more violence in black communities? We've moved the goalpost so much, but why do you think there's more violence in black communities?
Okay, personally, I think it's because black people have been oppressed and we haven't, integrated them fully in society. I think if you gave them full economic, generally, it's not because of their race. I don't think it's biological at all. I think it's because, they live in a worse situation and that situation caused them to be violent.
Okay.
It's not because of their race or this.
All right. Okay, good. Because I thought you were pulling a 1350 all right?
No.
I thought you were doing
all right.
No. But you it sounded like you were dog whistling the 1350 there. I had to make sure. I'm glad you're not a racist, all right? However, although you did do a bit of a yikesy take with the we shouldn't have done the Civil War to free the slaves. That was a bit of a yikes, but still, all right. So I've brought up
millions of people to end slavery, 2 evils.
Okay.
Either of them are good.
I would say that ending slavery was probably the lesser evil. Would you agree?
Killing millions of so you're saying killing millions of people is totally fine. The most deadly war in American history is totally fine.
If killing millions of people is the lesser evil, then yes.
So you're essentially saying killing people is completely fine if it's a political thing that I disagree with. Now, I know slavery is a lot more serious than what we're going through right now.
So if there is injustice and people's bodily autonomy is being harmed in mass, then yes, I think you can justify the violence against that group.
So you're pointing into one specific case, a very extreme case, and you're saying, well, this one person did this one thing, or a handful of people in the entire country of 330 million people, a handful of people are causing violence, so we're just going to cause an all-out war. We're just going to kill a whole bunch of people because a few people, are doing this horrible thing. It's just so ridiculous. You're trying to make it seem like it's the same thing. You're trying to justify your violence by pointing out some crazy extremist who's a horrible person. They're horrible people. I doubt many people are actually justifying that. And if they are, it's very sad. Okay,
so you're anti-Antifa.
Of course, yeah. I'm anti alt-right too. I think the alt-right is extremely violent. They have horrible political opinions. I don't agree with them at all.
Okay. All right. So I brought up, so the issue is that Project Veritas is extremely far right. I don't know if you agree with media bias fact check. It's generally pretty secular.
I brought up. They are a right.
Well, basically, basically all their history, they lie about basically everything they say. They're Project Veritas like believes in the Great
Okay,
Replacement and believes that
so
we need to
can I
have like
ask?
a White West and shit.
I don't agree with that. But my question is, did that Bernie Sanders supporter not say what they caught him on camera saying? All I'm
That
saying is,
communism is good.
well, what they're saying on camera, if you look at that, there's going to be violence if Bernie doesn't win. And so these are people on the left causing violence, which how is that any better than people on the right causing
Okay,
violence? You're saying
so
these people causing
generally,
violence are good because I agree with them, but these people causing violence are bad because I don't agree with them politically.
so
It's ridiculous.
if the thing that we agree or disagree on is that like a certain like a certain identity or a certain population of people should be murdered or enslaved, then yes, I think whether or not violence is justified against them is probably a relevant discussion to be had.
Oh, so you're advocating for violence, and I'm the crazy one.
Oh, I would never advocate for violence, only in Minecraft.
But against alt-righters, you think alt-righters should have violence against them?
In
Do you?
Minecraft,
Like,
yes.
what are you saying in Minecraft?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, you should attack alt-righters in Minecraft in a video game, not in real life. I would never advocate for political violence in real life.
okay, so you don't support. So let's say an Antifa person. Hold on, let me 1 second. So if an Antifa person like goes out and attacks someone who's like a Nazi, are you going to celebrate punching a Nazi? Are you going to publicly disavow, like not support those people? Are you going to publicly say, hey, this person punched a Nazi, I don't support that? Would you say that or no?
Of course I would disavow it.
I I want to believe you, but a lot of people on social media right now, they tend to support punching Nazis on the left.
Yeah, so
It's
do
really,
you think punching Nazis is bad?
I think punching anyone is bad. Punching people is never a way to go about anything.
Why?
Because violence is wrong. You shouldn't be punching people,
Okay, so
regardless of their
violence
political
is
opinions.
okay. So if their political opinion, so let's say you're a black person, right? And you see a
Yeah.
Nazi, and this Nazi, if they had their way, and this is what they're advocating for, is for you to be fucking killed. They're advocating for your murder. Do you think that what they are doing, in some way, shape, or form, is violence? We're advocating
Okay,
for
so
violence towards that person. Do you think a black person would be
okay,
justified here?
if someone is calling for the murder of someone else, they should be imprisoned. They shouldn't be punched by a random person on the street. If someone is out there saying, I think this person who's a different race than me deserves to be killed, then that person needs to go to jail because they're causing a danger to other people. But it doesn't give you the right as a citizen to
Okay,
just punch people.
so the problem is that's not how Nazis do things. They dog whistle
People
and
are
they use
calling me
euphemism. What?
people are calling me a fascist in the comments.
Oh,
It's crazy.
well, yeah, you're coming off as kind of a fascist. I'm not gonna lie. But
How?
well, because you're defending Nazis.
I'm not defending. I just don't think anyone should be punched. I said that person should be imprisoned. I think Nazis should be
So
imprisoned.
the issue
like, how
is,
am I a fascist?
so the issue is, if we're talking about how the real world works, all right. Are you aware of the Southern Strategy?
Educate me.
Okay, so the Southern Strategy was basically this thing that happened back in like the 50s or 60s when Republican politicians realized they couldn't just say racist shit anymore, like publicly, because they knew that they would just get completely laughed off the stage by the general population that isn't very racist, but they still wanted to appeal to racist voters mostly in the South. So they started using euphemism and dog whistles to appeal to the racist voters. So instead of talking about desegregation, they would say forced busing, which is a dog whistle for, desegregation. And so that's where dog whistling comes from, in euphemism. And so Nazis nowadays generally engage in a lot of euphemism and dog whistling. They won't come out and say that they want to kill all the Jews, but then occasionally, of course, when you find out what they actually believe, such as recently with Richard Spencer and that leaked audio that came out after the Charlottesville rally, where,
I would love to hear it. I haven't heard that one yet.
I can't show it on stream. He says the N-word and the K-slur quite a bit. So Richard Spencer presents himself, as do most alt-righters and Nazis, as being very, he's well-groomed, he's tall, he wears a suit, he's clean-cut, and he speaks very well, and he doesn't say things that are overtly, at least they wouldn't sound to the average person like Nazi propaganda, but when you just dissect what he says, he's dog whistling for like a white ethno-state and how the Jews are controlling the world. And then when you get him alone in a room and he doesn't know that he's being recorded, you hear him screaming. And I can send you the audio right now if you want to listen to it. You have him screaming about how the K words and the octoroons, which refer to mixed race people, are how his ancestors owned them 100 years ago, and how he wants to kill all these people and blah 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 blah.
Okay.
Like, these people aren't honest about their opinions. Nazis lie,
Yeah.
but if they have their way, and it's possible they might someday. I mean, it depends. K slur means the slur towards Jewish people, chat.
I didn't even know that was a slur. I don't know what that word is, but I'm not going to go into it.
Yeah, I can't say it on stream. I don't want to get banned. I'm on Twitch.
No, I totally understand. Don't get banned.
Yeah, so the issue here is that when we talk about enacting political violence against these groups, it's not because they necessarily disagree, right? Not advocating for violence against people just because we disagree. It's because what they advocate for, whether they're honest about it or not, is violence towards a group of people that don't choose their identity. Black people don't choose to be black. Gay people don't choose to be gay. Trans people don't choose to be trans.
Non-binary, but whatever.
Well, no, they don't. There's there's tons of non-binary people that have gender dysphoria.
I choose to be a 512th gender. My brain from birth chose to be a 512th gender.
Okay,
but
so
that's not relevant.
There are a shit ton of non-binary people with diagnosed gender dysphoria.
Okay, I want to talk about what you said before, because you were talking about dog whistles and stuff.
Yeah, we're gonna go back to that.
I agree. There are genuine Nazis who, like, they pretend to be like regular conservatives. But that doesn't mean that all conservatives are Nazis. It means that the extreme people are pretending to be less extreme than they are.
Okay, yes.
But that doesn't mean that someone like me is a Nazi because I'm a...
Well,
like, you can say the same thing about the left.
The problem is...
people are dog whistling communism. It's the same thing in the left and right. They're both extremes.
So...
You're just being biased towards one over the other.
I'm going to be honest with you. When you bring up, like, the whole dog whistling communism thing, I don't necessarily disagree with communism. And that can be its own debate if you want it to be, but, like...
Bernie Sanders is dog whistling communism. That is just a fact. In the same way that the alt-right people are doing.
Okay.
I'm just saying that.
Do you think communism and Nazism are comparable?
Yeah, they're both extremes, and they're both wrong.
So it's because something is extreme, it's wrong.
Not necessarily, but you don't have to look far and see communist countries. The Soviet Union, Joseph freaking Stalin.
Okay.
Like, my grandparents were from Cuba. Fidel Castro is a horrible person.
So what you have an issue with here, isn't communism or socialism. It's with authoritarian leaders and dictatorships.
I'm pretty sure Joseph Stalin is, a communist.
Yes. However, he was also an authoritarian dictator that killed and silenced people who spoke out against him. That's what you have an issue with. Do you know, or Mao Zedong, for example. So do you know what socialism and communism is? Like, just as a political ideology?
Obviously, I could be more educated, but I generally tend to think I know what those things are.
Could you give me, like, a Cliff Notes thing? Just, like, if you could summarize it?
Cliff Notes. Like, communism is, like, everything is, like, completely equal. Not entirely, but, like, you have the government centralizing things to ensure that people are, like... I mean, I don't, like, have a dictionary definition of it, but essentially, like, individual rights are kind of taken away because the government controls everything, and... I don't know. I don't know exactly the terms for it.
All right, So no,
you want to tell me what
communism. So communism necessitates the no existence of a government or hierarchy. All right. So communism and socialism, at their base, is about the democratic social ownership of the means of production. This means that the workers own their place of work. Real life examples of this already exist. Have you ever heard of a co-op?
What's that?
So a co-op, the good example of it is the Mondragon Corporation in Spain. Co-ops are where the workers own they own the land that their firm or business exists on. They own the materials that are used to create their product, and they are yeah, that's basically what a co-op is, right? There's managers, but the managers are generally not paid more than, like, what is it, like 3 times that of the lowest paid person that works there. Like, the highest paid person in a co-op isn't paid more than 3 times as much as the lowest paid person. So it's generally across the board very equal pay. The workers all own the same amount of shares in the firm. And as well as the workers having a democratic say in how the business is run. They democratically elect their managers. They democratically elect how things are done in general. That is what socialism is all about.
Okay, thank you. I would say that it prevents economic growth. Like, in Cuba, everything is stuck in the 1950s. I know this because my grandparents are Cuban.
So the problem with Cuba is that hold on, my throat's fucking itchy.
And it's functioning as a communist country does.
No. All right,
exploded case of communism ever has done.
so
Like
no.
Venezuela is socialist. Look at what happened to that.
My chat's
China,
my chat's about to lose their shit because you just said Vuvuzuela. My chat's about to lose its shit.
Venezuela.
So every single
I meant
example, so
Venezuela.
every single no, you said Venezuela, but Vuvuzuela is like the meme. So every single example that you've brought up and that you'll ever be able to bring up of like a failed socialist or communist like nation or society is by definition not actually communist or socialist.
Okay, so then what my saying is like, let's say Bernie
So
Sanders gets elected.
I mean, do you want to?
Who's to say that the same thing isn't going to happen? That like Bernie Sanders likes these countries. Like
So
like this is just an inevitability. What happens? I think you have an idealistic view of what socialism and communism should be. Then you look at real world examples of what has been in the past, and you're saying, oh, this
all
is
right.
different.
So
This
if
is
you
not
want
gonna
to
be the
talk,
same
if
thing
you
as
want to
what's
talk
always happened.
realistically, I would say it's a stretch to believe that Bernie is even going to be allowed to pass Medicare for all
No,
if he
I
gets
agree.
elected. All right.
If he
So we're
gets
not going
elected,
to.
nothing
So
will happen.
America.
But
So America
that's a good
isn't.
thing.
So America. Well, I don't think that.
But
Are
if he
you
left it to
against
his own
Medicare
accord,
for
he
all?
would. I think people should get health care, but I don't believe. Okay, this is a whole nother debate. I'm not going to pretend like I know everything because I don't.
So for starters, I personally believe that Bernie is a crypto leftist. That he actually is a socialist. That he actually is a like a far leftist. However, going off of what he, and that's just my opinion because I hope for that. But from any bit of evidence that you can dig up, he is not a communist. He is a social democrat.
Okay.
He's not a communist or a socialist. He's a social democrat. These are different ideologies.
I also think he's dog whistling though. Like in my opinion,
Yeah, I think you could make the case that he's dog whistling for actual socialism. But if we're being completely honest here,
there we go.
The only thing that he's going to achieve, if he becomes president, the only thing he will realistically achieve, mind you, I wish that he was able to achieve socialism in America. But regardless, the only thing that he would actually be able to
says a lot about you. But okay.
What does it say about me?
You're a socialist. I mean, I have nothing against you. Obviously, you have a different
wait.
political
What do
opinion.
you?
I think we can be cool.
Wait, what's wrong with socialism?
Look at all cases of socialism. There's not a single
Okay,
case of good
so
socialism.
we've never seen a case of socialism in a republic, a representative republic. What is America? It's like a democratic republic. We have never seen, please, the Paris Commune. The Paris Commune is an example. That's not as on a national level here. So, oh yeah, what about Vietnam? Vietnam's doing pretty well for itself. They're socialist.
I would have to look into it. I didn't know Vietnam was actually socialist. I don't tend to think it's the best country. I think if it was, we'd be seeing a lot more examples of at amazing stuff happening in Vietnam.
All right,
I've
so
never
here's
heard
the
that until now.
so here's the issue. So we have this thing here in America called the CIA. You know what the CIA is, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the CIA has a tendency of doing some things to countries that, mostly in South America, that try to establish a socialist or communist government that isn't, inevitably going to end up being authoritarian. They like to go down there and they like to do some things. So let's talk about Bolivia. Are you aware of the coup that happened in Bolivia recently?
So what happened in Bolivia? I'm not aware.
The coup. So Bolivia is a country that has a very, very interesting history. So in the past, it was colonized by like white European settlers, like back in the colony times, and these settlers came. They were mostly from like places like Spain and England, whatnot, and they came and they and they fucking enslaved and they tortured and they pushed the Bolivians, the natives there that were on the land, up into like the mountains and away from where they built their civilization, whatnot. And over the last few hundred years the country has existed, the hundreds of years the country has existed, the people in power, who are mostly white, have like legitimately discriminated against and shit all over the native Bolivians. This has been like a very long-term thing in Bolivia's history. And a couple years, and about 10 years ago, I think it was 12 years ago, Evo Morales, who was the first ever native Bolivian to be elected president of Bolivia, was elected. And he was amazing. He was a socialist. However, along with him, he brought unprecedented amounts of rights for LGBT people, for women. He had a women's council on his in his government for them to determine certain issues pertaining to like women's rights and whatnot, availability for abortions, things like that. Just any like women's rights shit, right?
I mean, I'm pro-life. So
I
that's
know
another
you are.
topic.
Believe me, I know you are. But anything that was a women's issue, there was like elected council of women that to get like a women's ID on it, because usually when it comes to government, due to all sorts of bullshit, it's usually run by men. So our boy Evo Morales was fucking great. The guy was a Chad. And under his presidency, we saw unprecedented growth and under Bolivia, and he had an extremely high approval rating, like an extremely high approval rating. But last year, the CIA, along with the help of the Bolivian government, staged a coup. The government
What's a coup?
a coup is when the military of a country forces the leader of the country out of power and puts a new person in place against the people's will.
Well, that's odd.
Yeah. So what was I going to say? The president of Bolivia was couped out of power by the leader or by the military of Bolivia, and guess who was put in place? A woman whose name I can't remember, but she like legitimately is a fascist. I know you're gonna say oh because she disagrees, but there's literally a tweet of her saying that she wants to see the native Bolivians and their satanic religions driven into the hills, like the degenerate savages that they are. Like this lady's an actual fascist. And there's a lot of evidence to support, because America has done this in the past, and I'll go ahead and list the countries that they've done this to, that the CIA, the American government, was involved in destabilizing this country and staging the coup, because America has a huge stake in preventing any socialism or any communism from successfully existing in the world, because if it does, then the American people might not be so susceptible to the Red Scare propaganda that has clutched the fucking boomers and, unfortunately, it seems the zoomers of this country for so many generations.
Okay, first of all, I'm not going to say that these people that I've never heard of before, I'm not going to say this person is or isn't a fascist or socialist, because I don't know. So I'll take your word. I don't understand how this person who just sounds like a regular Democrat is a socialist on your stance. I don't know whether the case or not, but they sound like a typical Democrat, but it's whatever.
So why do you hold so many strong opinions on these topics, but you've conceded to me so many times that you haven't done any research?
I don't know. I'm just saying, based on what you've told me, that's what I tend to think, but I could be completely wrong, so I'm not going to pretend like I know anything.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
So I have an entire...
I just want to know, why do you think this person is a socialist? I've never heard of this person before. I just want to know why you think that.
Oh, he was very open about it. He's been very open that Evo Morales, yeah, he's a socialist.
Okay. So then this person is a socialist. Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and under his presidency, he had an insanely high approval rating, and the country was doing amazing under him. Massive under his presidency of only I think it was he was president for 9 years, I think. Under his presidency of less than a decade, Bolivia saw unprecedented advancements in human rights and economic stability and prosperity.
You know what I'll say? Here's what I'll say. Mm-hmm. So I think in Venezuela, it didn't the first few years of I forget his name, the guy in power. Venezuela's first few years were amazing, right? Hitler's first few years were amazing for the economy. A lot of these horrible, horrific people, it typically starts off with tremendous growth in the great things for the countries, and then it turns out to be this horrific thing.
So everybody in my chat is losing their shit right now, because Venezuela is the go-to example of America destabilizing a country in South America. This is extremely well known.
So you're telling me that Venezuela didn't fail because it's socialist. You're saying that Venezuela failed because America, for whatever reason, is we hate socialism so much, we're going to stop it whenever possible in other countries that we have nothing to do with.
Yes. This is very well studied. Okay. Wait, have you ever taken, how old are you? Wait, it's not an alt-right conspiracy. This is something you would have learned in civics class. What grade are you in? How old are you? Are you in college?
I'm a sophomore in college.
You're a sophomore in college. I'm surprised. So you were in high school, I assume. Did you ever take a civics class?
At that first half of ninth grade, I dropped out.
Oh, okay. That explains. For personal reasons. I don't want to be mean here, but that explains a lot. Because if you took a civics class, you'd be very aware of this. This is one of the very first things you learn about in civics. The Cold War, all the American destabilization that happened, things involving the banana republics in South America. This is chapter 6 American history.
I know about the Red Scare, but my question is, you're telling me that you're making it sound like, in my opinion, the way I see it, right, is that communism ruins countries, and communism like kills. It's horrible to people. If
Well,
you live in a communist country, millions of people are going to die because you
well,
look what happened to Stalin. So,
no.
in my opinion, the U.S. is doing this because they want to protect these countries. Your opinion is this is a conspiracy. They're not trying to protect these countries. They're just scared that people will see communism and think, "Ooh, communism is actually good. We want communism
No,
too."
because America
And
is run. The politicians here in America or have their fucking have corporations have their hands in American politicians' pockets. Every single American politician, barring maybe a few examples like Bernie Sanders, for example, has a massive stake in corporations and in capitalism thriving, because then corporations make more money and they make more money from those corporations. We know this because of lobbying, all sorts of shit. You should know about how much money-based politics fucking rules America, okay? Are you
yeah,
aware of this, right?
I'm
So
aware of that. Yeah.
it is the prerogative of American politicians to ensure that there exists no positive examples of socialism or communism in the world, because if American citizens see that, they may vote for people like Bernie Sanders or even more extreme candidates, because then we may have socialism or communism here in America, which, guess what? Hurts billionaires and owners of corporations, because they don't get to be billionaires or owners of corporations anymore,
Okay.
and they're the ones who have the say in how things happen in America because they have so much
Can
money.
can we like okay? Where is the proof that these corporations are conspiring this? That these
They're
corporations are purposely
conspiring
saying
this.
they're conspiring against
This is
communism.
just I mean this is historical consensus. I mean, you admitted that you've never taken a American history class. I mean, do you want me to like send you the Wikipedia page on American intervention in South America or in Latin America?
I can do research at my own time, and
Okay.
I'd be willing to change my opinion if I can see that that's happened.
Okay. I
I
mean,
find
like,
it
so,
crazy.
like, there's a lot of very popular, like, you've probably seen them before, but I don't know if you like gave them much thought. But there's a lot of very like iconic political comics from around the time that this happened, of like American presidents. Like there's one of, I think it was Roosevelt, I believe, like bringing down, like just walking, like a massive Roosevelt, I think it was, walking down, carrying a bunch of American naval ships, carrying them down to South America from America with a big fucking bat that says like American intervention. Like this is like very well understood.
Okay, but like we don't know what's causing the intervention is like these corporations.
Oh,
Like
actually, no, never mind. Actually, do I have? As a matter of fact, here's a article from Business Insider talking about companies donating millions to political causes to have say in the government. Here are 10 that have done the most. Here are 10
okay,
companies that have given the most in 2018. Here you go. I'll send you a
okay,
link.
okay. I'll take your word for it. So let's say that these companies are doing this. I have no reason to deny you. You're obviously more educated on this thing, so I'll give you that. But just because the companies have stake in this, that doesn't necessarily mean that these companies are wrong. It might be in their best interest, but their best interest might also be aligned in what's best for the average person. What if
What?
communism is really bad, and just because these corporations are corporations doesn't mean that they're wrong?
I'm
Like
sorry. I've
they may have
already.
different incentives.
I'm sorry, but I already like explained what communism and socialism are. I mean, do I need?
Well,
Excuse
no,
me. Do I need to do
in
it
my
again?
opinion, let communism and socialism happen. I personally think it would be a train wreck because we've seen it happen.
Well,
If
I've
corporations
I've
didn't
provided you. I can
interfere,
provide you once again with the article that all these different communist or socialist nations that were either being ruled, that were either not a democracy, where the people, like, that actually weren't communism because it wasn't a democracy. The people didn't own the means of production. China, the Soviet Union, Mao's China, as well. Like all these different
okay.
examples, Stalin, Cuba, all that shit. The workers don't own the means of production, or there is a
Well,
fucking dictator in charge
well,
that
doesn't
makes all
that
that
say
calls the
that's
shots,
just
or
inevitable?
there was
It's just
American
inevitable
intervention.
that if you try to start communism, it fails. If you try to start communism, that's what happens, right?
What?
Because you look at all these examples, like I said, and if you can't think of a single good example, and I'm sorry, but the United States doesn't have the power to stop freaking Joseph Stalin. I'm just saying, look, there's a lot. We could talk about this for hours. Yeah, this is a really long freaking debate. I don't even know how we got this far.
I mean, it's been a hell of a meme, but I mean, I can send you the articles on American intervention,
Yeah.
and also there's Rojava, which is an example everybody is talking about. That's involving the Syrian civil war. Do you know who the Kurds are?
I've heard of their situations, like these people who were defending America or something, and Trump
They,
backed
they
them
they've
out.
yeah, basically in the Syrian civil war is happening right now. Very complicated, big geopolitical mess, right?
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so Rojava, It goes by a different name if we want to be more inclusive, because it's sort of a collection of a lot of different groups. But it most notably it's the Kurds and Rojava. They are American allies. They've done a shit ton to fight ISIS. The problem is Turkey is performing an ethnic genocide on the Kurds because of religious reasons and blah blah blah, and just Turkey's fucking shit, right? And
Right.
American troops being stationed in this area was the only thing preventing Turkey from going down there and fucking slaughtering the Kurds. But Trump pulled out our troops, and the next day, Turkey shelled the border where the Kurds and Rojava, the Kurds are like currently at. Now,
Okay.
Rojava, particularly the Kurds. Wait, why is the stream effing? Did the stream die? We good? Oh yeah, people are
I
effing because of something else. Okay, yeah. So because of oh, F for the Kurds, yeah. So because of this, if we actually go ahead and look at Rojava and the Kurds and the ideology and everything, they're socialist. Not just that, but they're extremely progressive, like really pro LGBT, like so progressive you'd be like, wait, are you sure this is the Middle East that we're talking about here? Like, it's pretty fucking crazy.
Hmm. Okay.
So I mean, you're bringing up examples of like socialism or communism failing, but neither these either aren't actual socialism or communism, or America went and did some little things down in South America, wherever it was, to try to fuck with them, and they
So,
succeed.
oh my God. I love how you try to discredit every example of communism. Just say, oh, this doesn't count because this doesn't count because this doesn't count because that's all I'm
So if
hearing
it
you
doesn't
say.
count because it is by definition not communism or not socialism, then yes, it
They
doesn't
call
count.
themselves communists. The Nazi Party
That's
called
not how.
themselves like the
Okay,
socialists.
I guess we should probably bring it around here, but
Yeah, we should probably end
so
this soon.
so a economic system is not a gender. It doesn't matter how you identify. It is what it is. If the workers don't own the means of production, it's not capitalism. It's not socialism. That is the literal base of socialism and communism. Workplace
I love how in
democracy
this
and the
issue you're
workers
just
owning
like,
the means
it
of
is what
production.
it is. It doesn't. So you're saying identity doesn't matter.
Not
That's,
with
that's
with
funny.
not
That's funny that
not when we're
that's funny you're
talking
saying that.
about not when we're talking about economic systems, I am afraid.
Funny hearing that coming out of your mouth.
What?
Identity doesn't matter. It just is what it is.
It is
Here
what
we
it
are.
is. That's
The truth
here
comes
we
out.
are. The truth is here. All right, do you want to bring it back to the gender stuff, I guess?
I mean, we could close it out. I had so much fun with this debate. I know you probably think I'm a bigot. I'm a racist. I'm a sexist, homophobe, transphobe, a
I mean,
fascist.
I think you're probably a fascist. Yeah, that's not like an insult. And I'm not saying this to like make you feel bad or to like make you look bad or anything.
How am I
I just,
a freaking fascist?
I mean, so
I'm not saying you're a
you're.
communist. You might be, but I'm not
Oh no,
calling you a
I'm a
communist.
socialist. I'm a market socialist. So
Okay, so you might be, but that's you saying you're a socialist. I never said I was a fascist, and I'm not a
well, it
fascist.
doesn't matter if you say you're a fascist. Fascists usually don't agree that they're
You're right.
fascists because it
And
sounds yucky.
it doesn't matter if you say you're a freaking what is it? You are a demi boy. You are what you are.
What am I?
I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm just saying someone
Okay,
who identifies as a demi
so
boy. You are what you are, not what you say.
so I guess to wrap this up, you've come in here and you have not supplied me a single study or a single source to back up anything that you said, and I have
I don't
provided a
have time to do
source
that.
and I have provided studies for every single claim that I've made.
I would love to give you sources if I had the time to do so, but since we're on stream, I can't really do that right now.
But
I
you
kind of woke
DM'd
up to
me,
seeing your response.
so you DM'd me on Twitter last night requesting a debate, and you seem to disagree with me on a lot of things, and you didn't do like even the tiniest bit of research on any of this.
Well, I was planning on doing research before starting the debate, but I woke up and like the moment I wake up at weird times. I woke up at 3 p.m. And as soon as I wake up, I see your thing, and I'm like, oh, I was gonna do research, but you're on stream now. I'll just go on live. I mean, and in the future, I definitely should be more prepared. I do definitely agree. I think considering that I didn't have a lot of resources on me, I think I did pretty good in this debate. I know like people are saying I got crushed or whatever, but I mean that's because all your fans are going to agree with you, which is fine. I'm not expecting your fans to agree with me. This
I
isn't
would,
about changing your
I would
opinion. I wouldn't expect that.
just a little bit of advice: if you're debating a streamer, don't look at their chat.
Okay,
It's just
sure. How come?
it's a bad idea. It's just going to be demoralizing for you. It's just generally a rule of thumb that
Hey,
I
I've
recommend.
been doing fine with that. I think I've been doing all right.
All right.
I think that's a good plan, but
All right, I'm gonna. I sent you a few sources here. I've sent you the ultimate research document that I have that lists all the organizations and everything and their opinions on sex, gender, all that kind of shit. I've also sent you a link from Business Insider, the companies that have donated millions to political causes to have say in the way that our government is run, as well as like outside of America and whatnot. I'm also sending
hmm
you an article from Wikipedia. If you don't trust Wikipedia, then you can look at the sources that they cite on all of the instances of American interventionism in South America. This is very well documented. It's not a conspiracy or
hmm
anything. This is just basic, like, Chapter 6 American history. I definitely recommend you read up on it. And if you want to do a reschedule a debate sometime, we can definitely do that.
I would look forward to it. Let's do part two. I'm so excited.
Alrighty. Well, it's been fun talking
I
to you today.
Yeah, I've never done this kind of debate before. I think I did all right. I know a lot of people are crushing me in the comments, but you know what? I'm proud of myself. I'm glad I got to express my opinions, even though no one's going to change their. I just don't think people should call me a fascist for disagreeing with them. I'm not a fascist because I'm not a fascist
Okay.
because I disagree with you.
So you're not a fascist because because you disagree. You're a fascist
I'm a
because your
fascist.
ideology I
Oh,
aligns mostly with the definition of fascist. So here's the issue.
how?
So here's okay. Do you want me to define fascism for you?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I did terrible
So
because you guys are freaking socialists, but whatever.
okay. So fascism is an incoherent ideology. However, the most accepted definition of fascism in most academic spaces is that fascists inherently reject principles of the Enlightenment, progressivism, uh, uh, anything like that. They
So
reject these
Republicans are
things.
fascists in your eyes. Anyone?
Well,
Oh God, KME.
they're reactionary. Fascists might be generally. I think that they probably are fascist, but it depends. Like for
Wait,
example,
so you
Pence
just
is
said you
definitely
generally think that Republicans
well.
are fascists. You
So
literally said it. In your
it
opinion, Republicans are
depends.
fascists.
So it depends. So for example, Mike Pence would
Oh my
definitely.
God.
So Mike Pence would definitely be considered a fascist,
I'm
right?
not calling liberals communism because they're. I'm not calling
Well,
liberals communists, but you're saying Republicans, a lot of them are fascists.
well, of
It's a
course.
very, very
So
small minority.
okay, so
Oh my God, this is
liberals aren't
insanity.
wait. Okay, so liberals aren't communists because liberals support capitalism. Leftists are or well, not communists, but leftists can be socialist, communist, anarchist. There's a lot of different political ideologies, but they all oppose fascism. They all oppose capitalism, right?
A lot of
Liberals
people
do
on the
not
right
oppose
oppose
capitalism.
fascism.
Sure. Usually it's like
Most people
very
oppose
center.
fascism.
Usually it's like center right people. Okay,
Oh,
like
come on.
right
You're not going to tell
libertarians.
me
So
that
I mean,
there's.
I can define. Do you want me to define fascism for you? I mean, here we go.
Yeah,
Let's bring
go
it
for
up.
it. Define fascism. Go for it.
This is a generally accepted definition of fascism. It's a form of far-right authoritarian nationalism characterized by dictatorial power, forcible suppression of opposition, and strong regimentation of society based around the ideal belief of how the world ought to be.
Okay, so how.
Usually harkening back to a previous state of society.
Okay, based on that definition, like, how is, like, people on the like, far left not a fascist?
Because people on
They're
the far
suppressing people that disagree with them. They're suppressing people that call people the wrong gender.
so
They're suppressing people who have dangerous beliefs, aka anyone who's conservative.
so people on the
Seems pretty
far
fascist to
so
me.
okay, so people on the far left aren't against the Enlightenment. They aren't against progressivism. In fact, they're aggressively progressive. And they also aren't in favor of dictatorial rule or strong regimentation of society that harkens back to
Joseph
the
Stalin, Fidel
Joseph's.
Castro.
So these aren't leftists.
They're communists, but
So
that's far
so
left. But well,
okay, wait, wait.
this,
Do you know why they rose to power and were able to like and were communists and whatnot? Do you know why?
people like them because
Okay,
they're like
they
Bernie
were
Sanders.
so they
People
were
like their message.
okay.
People like Bernie
Exactly.
Sanders.
Exactly. Not like Bernie
And hey,
Sanders.
people like Hitler.
Okay, so not like Bernie Sanders. It's because their ideology was very popular. However, they used that popularity to take power, and they basically fucked over the people. They for example, fuck, who am I thinking of right off the bat? Sorry, it's fucking late and I got a headache.
Sorry.
I think Stalin. I think Stalin was like really popular. The people the people of Russia really communism, socialism was a really popular idea. People liked it, and so they were way more willing to allow him to come into power. However, what he implemented was not communism or socialism. The workers didn't own the means of production. There was no workplace democracy. He was a authoritarian who silenced dissenters. None of these have anything to do with communism or socialism. In fact, it was not communism or socialism, because the two main necessities for something to be communism or socialism weren't there. No worker-owned means of production and no workplace democracy.
Okay.
All right. Well,
I'll say I'm Cuban. My grandmother got her like job taken away from her.
Wait.
She got her house taken away from her.
Wait, did she own like a plantation or something?
I don't remember. All I know is she owns like a business. They took away her house, and like my grandparents had to flee the country because it was so bad in Cuba. And then Bernie Sanders says like, oh, Cuba actually did some good things, It's like the alt-right thing.
Do you disagree with the fact that the literacy rates in Cuba are really high?
So you're defending communist Cuba?
No, I'm defending the fact that the literacy rates are high. So Obama actually praised the same thing, but I imagine you think Obama's probably like a socialist or something. But so what Bernie Sanders said.
I don't agree with Obama.
So what Bernie Sanders said was that that Cuba is authoritarian, and America should not seek to be more like Cuba in general. However, there are positive things about Cuba that Americans can learn from. For example, the high literacy rates and their great education system. That's something that we can adopt and learn from without having all of the downsides of Cuba. Do you not think that having high literacy rates and a good educational system is a good thing, and we should praise that?
What about the economic stuff, like all the good stuff that happened under Hitler's reign? Like, who would say that? Who would say, yeah, there's some good things that happened under Hitler?
So, for starters, the efficiency of Nazism and whatnot is a myth. That's literally a myth. For example, like the belief that Hitler built the Autobahn, not true. That's a myth.
Well, it was someone. I don't know like all the facts, but I do believe that
Hitler built it. Was it Mussolini? I don't know. Yeah. So. Most of the examples I'm
not defending him at all. I would never go out and say, Hitler did this good thing. No, of course not. Oh my God, he's disgusting. But like, how would you say this Fidel Castro is a horrible person? But he did some good things. I'm just saying.
No, it's not saying Fidel Castro is a bad person, but he did some good things. It's Cuba has really high literacy rates. Maybe we can learn from their education system.
And maybe imply some of the stuff that they did.
No.
Maybe we should become communists a little bit.
No. He said they have very high literacy rates and a good education system.
Yeah, isn't
that
it
crazy?
Dog whistle? It's a dog whistle for communism.
Maybe it's acknowledging the fact that it's acknowledging the fact that America, the richest and most powerful country in the world, has a worse education system and worse literacy rates than fucking Cuba, which is being ruled by a dictator. Maybe we ought to try to improve.
So maybe we should hire a dictatorship. Wow, that's lovely. I love hearing that. Thank you. Dictators can do good things, guys.
I really don't want to be mean to you right now, but what you're saying is unbelievably stupid.
Oh, why is it stupid?
It's because
tell me why you think it's stupid. Tell me why you think it's stupid.
I think it's stupid because you're completely strawmanning my argument. When I say that America, the most powerful, or when Bernie Sanders, I should say, says that America, the richest and most powerful country in the world, has a worse education system and worse literacy rates than fucking Cuba, run by Castro, that maybe we ought to learn from that, and that we should probably try to improve ourselves.
Okay. Well, maybe. Is it worth it, though? Is it worth it if all you get from communism is a literacy rate?
Do you think that in order to raise our literacy rates, we have to have a dictator in power? We don't need communism or socialism to have higher literacy rates. We could literally overhaul our educational system, funnel more money to our schools tomorrow, and this issue would be solved. It doesn't have anything to do with communism or socialism or a dictator being in power.
The steps to doing that revolve with society becoming more communist than it was before. That doesn't necessarily mean it's communism, but like,
what do you think? Wait, how is it? Okay, so if you think it is more, okay, so there's a spectrum when it comes to political ideologies. I can.
Okay, maybe not a spectrum. Like,
okay.
I don't know. It's
confusing. All right. Okay. Listen. I love you, my friend. Thank you for coming onto the stream today. It's been a good time.
Hey, no, it's super. This is super fun. I really enjoyed this. I'm glad you gave me the time of day. This is entertaining. I really legitimately think this is like a really entertaining stream. I don't know.
I had a fun time. I've got about 400 viewers right now, so it was a good
Oh,
one.
sweet. So this is good for me. This is good for your business. This is good for your
It's
channel. I'm bringing people here because they want to see this.
it's
Oh, this
been
is great.
yeah, people
But you're giving a freaking fascist, quote unquote fascist, a platform though.
I
I'm
think
sure people are gonna try to
I
cancel you over
think
that. You're canceled.
yeah,
Your woke
they're
audience hates you.
I mean the woke school types will cancel me even if I say trans rights, but
Oh,
those people we don't
yeah.
worry about. The thing is, my audience
Oh,
seems to
you're
be of the
debating one.
opinion.
This is
Well, yeah,
you're
I
gonna
will
debate
be,
one of those
but
people. It's
I, I'm,
fun.
I debate them very often. I don't enjoy it, but I do. Big Lundy, thank you for the $20 donation. I'll read that in a second. Um, yeah, no, I think my audience is probably of the opinion that I did a good job destroying your arguments. I don't think they would agree I platformed your beliefs, but either way, it was a fun discussion. If you want to do some
No, it was.
independent research,
I'm up for that.
I definitely I sent you the document that I sent you. The Google document has everything ranging from the
I'll read it.
efficacy of worker co-ops to sex and gender, all that shit. None of these are like libcucky, like SJW organizations or anything. All these are either from like all the sources that I've sent you are like very prestigious medical journals. Like what I've sent you just is all about the consensus in the medical community and all these different issues. So either way, thank you for talking with me today.
Of
Maybe
course.
we'll be able to unfascist you at some point.
Yeah, your
Well,
audience thinks anything I say is a fallacy because I'm conservative and they feel that way about any conservative, so it's impossible for me to win this debate. But that being said, I'm proud of it. I think we had a cool debate. It's
I
nice talking to you.
I
I
had
respect you as a human being despite having our political differences. I wish you did the same for me.
Can you say non-binary rights before you go?
I think non-binary people are valid, but they're not transgender.
Say
I think
say.
everyone deserves rights.
Can you say non-binary rights?
I mean, if you want me to,
Yes, say non-binary rights.
non-binary people deserve rights, but they're
No, no,
not
no, no.
trans.
Just
They're
say
not transgender.
non-binary rights.
Okay, non-binary rights.
All right, there we go. All
Fine.
right, have a good one.
But you know what I mean. Okay, thank you. You
Oh yeah,
too.
have a good one.
Bye.
What the fuck did that turn into? I thought I was having a debate. I thought I was having a debate about fucking non-binary people being trans, and we got into fucking communism and socialism. She's unironically a fascist. Oh my god. I said yesterday. I said yesterday in a discussion that there's trans fascists, and they didn't believe me. Holy shit. Big Lundy, thank you for the $20 donation. Says, how much to come on stream and talk to you about your debate performance and give some constructive criticisms of your rhetoric? I've got notes. If you want to send me your notes on Discord, I'll gladly read over them. But I am probably just gonna do one more debate with Zoomer Nation, then we're gonna move on. That was a good time.